Hello there, and welcome back to my Pokemon TCG ASMR series. Today I'm going to be showing you how you can get started actually playing with the cards. Now, if you don't have any Pokemon cards yet, there are a couple ways you can go about getting started playing the game. You can either pick up some booster packs and try to build your own deck, but since there are only 10 cards in each pack and you need a minimum of 60 cards to make a deck, I would suggest starting out with one of their pre-made decks. They usually release a couple different decks for each generation. These are all X and Y. This one is just the base Xerneas one. This is from Phantom Forces, and this is from Roaring Sky. So basically, these are ready to play immediately. They have 60 cards, and they're all structured in a way that is pretty balanced and includes everything you'll need to just get started. So after you've been playing with the cards for a bit, and you would like to try and get some booster packs, you can then swap in some of those cards you get from the booster packs into the decks once you find out what each deck needs. So what exactly goes into making a deck? I'm going to do a more in-depth video on this later, but let's just start off by looking at what comes in one of these base decks. Both of these I have put some of my own cards into, but I haven't changed this one. So this one is from the Roaring Skies set. It features Zapdos, and I believe it is electric and grass type. So typically, when making a deck, you want to pick one or two types, and then maybe some normal type Pokemon in there. This one is electric and grass and dragon type. This dragon type can use both electric, grass, and this colorless energy, which basically just means it can be any energy card you can substitute in for that one. So there are a bunch of different types of cards. There's energy cards, which if you played Magic the Gathering, it's kind of like the land cards, but basically they let the Pokemon do their moves. So for this Pokemon, in order to do this move, I would need to attach an energy card to him. You can only attach one energy per turn though, so that's where the strategy comes in for like which Pokemon to put it on. We also have different types of Pokemon cards. For instance, this Dratini is a basic Pokemon, and you can evolve him by putting this Dragonair on top of him. You cannot evolve a Pokemon the same turn that it was placed, and you cannot just place down an evolved Pokemon without having the base Pokemon there. So let's take a look at this card. This is a basic Pokemon Dratini. The HP up here is 50. He is a dragon type. He has two different attacks here. Hook just does 10 damage and has no special conditions and takes 1 energy. I forgot to note that once you attach an energy to a Pokemon, it stays on that Pokemon unless there's like a specific condition that says you discard it. Its other attack here, Slam, has a little condition that says flip 2 coins. This attack does 20 damage times the number of heads, so that's why there's like a little time symbol right after the 20. And this attack requires an electric energy and a colorless energy. So if I had an electric energy and a leaf energy, I could do both of these attacks. Down here you can see the Pokemon's weakness. So this is a fairy type weakness. So if the opponent's Pokemon was fairy type, it would do twice the damage that it would normally. A Pokemon can also have a resistance, and it'll tell you whether the resistance takes away 30 damage or 20 damage from the attack. So let's say this Dratini was resistant to a certain type. If that type attacked Dratini, it would, the attack would do like 20 less damage than it normally would. Retreat cost. I'm going to get more into that when I kind of show you a mock setup of the game, but basically if this is your Pokemon that is out, your active Pokemon, like in the game, you can switch it out for a Pokemon in your party or your bench by taking however many energy cards it says here and discarding it. So let's see some of the other types of cards that we have in this deck. This is a trainer card. It is an item. You can play as many item cards as you like during your turn before your attack. So this says put a basic Pokemon from your discard pile onto your bench. It's a revive. Your bench is like your party in the game. So it says here you can play as many item cards as you like during your turn before your attack. Attacking ends your turn. So basically whatever you have to do before you want it to be your opponent's turn, you have to do before you attack. So here's some more trainer cards. These are both supporter cards. This one simply says draw 3 cards, and this one lets you search your deck for a supporter card and a basic energy card. Now, you can only play one supporter card during your turn before your attack. Another little note here is the little symbols in the corner. This one on the far right indicates what expansion set these cards belong to, and this little diamond indicates the rarity of the card. This is an uncommon card. And this star means it's a rare card. There are also circles for common cards and stuff, and then like promos will have a black star, and super rares will have like a shiny star and stuff. So this is another basic Pokemon. It's colorless or normal type, has an HP of 100, and then has 2 different attacks. He actually does have a resistance, and it says -20 there. So I would, for example, be able to play him on my first turn. We have some more supporters. Another item card. So this Voltorb would evolve into an Electrode. So you can see they're together. There's also a Zapdos. This is a special energy card. Double Dragon Energy. Can only be used on Dragon types. This is a bit of an interesting deck because it actually has 3 types of Pokemon in it. It has Electric, Leaf, and Dragon, but the reason why this deck can work is because the dragons, these specific dragons, only require Electric and Leaf energy. So if, for example, you wanted to do a deck with 3 different Pokemon types, it would be very hard to draw the energy cards that you need in order to make that work. Typically, a deck Oh, I guess technically it's 4 different types of Pokemon if you include the colorless or normal type. But colorless types can usually just use any energy, so that also works. Typically, if you're building your first deck, I would recommend sticking to just one type if you have enough cards of that type, and then throwing in some colorless, because it's a lot easier to draw the energy cards that you need, because it'll always be the right energy card. For example, if you had Executor out and you were waiting for a leaf energy, but you just keep drawing electric ones, it's not really going to help you very much. So then we have some more item cards. More Pokemon. So you notice here there's stage 1, so that's like the first of all form after a basic, and then there's actually stage 2 as well. So if you had, for example, Blastoise, Wartortle, and Squirtle, you could not put the Blastoise on top of the Squirtle directly. You have to keep evolving them, and you can't put Wartortle down and then immediately Blastoise. You have to wait a turn. I'm just kind of going to be throwing out random rules like that because it's kind of hard to structure this video. It just seems like the best way to show you is just to kind of dive in with the deck and then go back in with some more detailed stuff, as well as a mock game. So you can kind of get an idea of what cards you'll want to include in a deck. So that was kind of the first look at a deck of Pokemon cards. In order to play the game, you will need 2 full decks of cards. You also might find it useful to have some of the damage counters to keep track. You can either use these, which came with this deck when I purchased it, I believe. There's a poison symbol and a burn symbol. Or you can use pennies or little beads or something, anything that makes it easy to see at a glance how much damage is on each Pokemon. You'll also want a coin, because there are a lot of different Pokemon attacks or card effects that will need a coin to be flipped. So if you have those, you should be pretty much ready to play. So, as I mentioned, Pokemon can become burned or paralyzed or poisoned or have any number of special conditions like in the game. For example, if an attack poisons a Pokemon, they take 10 damage at the end of your opponent's turn. Then, at the end of your turn, they take 10 damage. And then, at the end of each player's turn, they take 10 damage. So, poisoning a Pokemon is a pretty effective way of doing damage. So, being burned is a pretty new Pokemon status condition. I don't actually have any Pokemon that can do a burn attack, but I believe it's similar to poison, where you take 10 damage per turn. If it's not, you'll see a correction. There's also, you can be paralyzed. So if a Pokemon is paralyzed, they cannot attack that turn or retreat. The Pokemon is then unparalyzed after your turn. So essentially, it's just a way of stalling for a turn. You can also confuse an opponent's Pokemon. So if a Pokemon is confused, you turn it upside down, and if I try and attack the opponent's Pokemon, I have to flip a coin. If I flip a coin and it's tails, I take 20 damage and I do not get to attack. So a Pokemon stays confused as long as it's your active Pokemon. And what I mean by active Pokemon is, for example, the game is kind of set up where you have a deck. The Pokemon that you have out are your active Pokemon, and then your bench, you can put up to 5 Pokemon on your bench. So you can have a total of 6 Pokemon in play, like in the game. So if I want to retreat, that means I would retreat this Pokemon and put Voltorb up. So now, this Zapdos has a retreat cost of 2 energy. So in order to retreat this Zapdos and bring out Voltorb, I would need to discard those 2 energies, and then I could bring Voltorb out. If Zapdos was poisoned and I had enough energy on Zapdos, I could discard that energy, retreat him to the bench, and then Zapdos would no longer be poisoned. So that's a useful way to shuffle your Pokemon around. So when a Pokemon is asleep, you have to flip before your turn and after your turn to see if he's awake. Or I guess you get to, you don't have to, but so imagine it's just before my turn, the person just put Voltorb to sleep. If I get a heads, Voltorb is automatically awake, and he can behave as if he was never asleep. If I get a tails, then Voltorb remains asleep and I can't attack or retreat him during that, unless I have like an item card that tells me I can do so. But then after my turn, I can check and see if he becomes awake by flipping again. So, how do you actually win a Pokemon game? So coming back to their HP here, you see he has 60 HP. Basically, your opponent will do damage, and when Voltorb has 60 or more damage done to it, it will faint. So when it faints, you have to put it and all of the cards attached to it into the discard pile. Your opponent then gets to take a prize card. So what is a prize card? At the beginning of the game, you put down how many prizes you want to have. They're cards that remain face down until a Pokemon gets knocked out. So let's say my opponent knocked out Voltorb. Or, for simplicity's sake, let's say I knocked out one of the opponent's Pokemon. As soon as I knock out that Pokemon, it's the end of my turn, but I get a bonus. I get to take one of the cards on my side that I had placed in my prize cards. I get to put it in my hand, and that signifies that I basically took a point. Once all the prize cards on my side have been drawn, that means I win. So typically, if you're just playing a short match, you'll do 4 cards as the prize. For a longer game, you'll do 6. Another way to win the game is if your opponent does not have any benched Pokemon at the time when they have gotten their active Pokemon knocked out. So let's say I just had Voltorb here and no Pokemon on my bench. Once Voltorb gets knocked out and I do not have a Pokemon already on my bench, then I lose. Another way to lose is if your deck goes down to 0 cards. The moment that it becomes your turn and you cannot draw any more cards, you lose also. So that's kind of the basics, without going too in depth into like an actual mock game. But so now you should know approximately what you need to get started. So if you're interested in getting started, you will need 2 people, 2 decks, and I'd highly recommend a coin and some damage counters. Along with some of the decks that are pre-made, they actually include a little map of the play area for first timers, so you can see, oh, here's where I put my deck, here's where I put my bench, my active Pokemon cards, and they also include some rules. I don't normally use those because it seems, I know how to play, but I would recommend trying that little mat out, especially if it's your first time playing. So I will be doing a little mock game next if you would like to see like how a normal game would play out. So I guess stay tuned for that. Otherwise, I think most of the basics were gone over. Hope you liked it. I feel like I had a lot of information to cover, and I'm sure that I missed some things. Let me just see here. I wrote some notes in the corner. In addition to items and supporters, I didn't come across any stadium cards, but those are trainer cards that basically change the effect of the stadium. For instance, I have one called Fairy Garden, which makes any fairy type Pokemon in play have no retreat cost, so that's very useful. Once you play that stadium card, it's in play until the end of the game, or until a specific card says, that it has to be discarded. Yeah, I think that's about it. So I'm just going to make some card noises and other ASMR type noises until the end of the video. But in the meantime, if you'd like to see any of the other how to play Pokemon TCG videos, I'm going to link them in the description once they are done, and at the end of the video link my entire Pokemon card playlist, so you can see, so you can check those out if you like. Hope you liked it, and I'm sure I'll be doing more in-depth videos very shortly. Okie dokie. Here we go. welcome back to my Pokemon card TCG playthrough series. Today I'm going to be showing a little mock game so you can see how a typical Pokemon card game plays out.